In the vast, ancient landscape of human storytelling, few narratives have captured the essence of the human condition as profoundly as the tragedies of Oedipus and Hamlet, and the biblical tales of the Tanakh. These stories, though separated by time, culture, and context, share a common thread. They all explore the complex interplay between the personal and the impersonal, the individual and the cosmic. However, they do so in strikingly different ways, each reflecting the unique philosophical and religious perspectives of their respective cultures. This video will delve into these differences, examining how the Greeks, the Elizabethans, and the ancient Hebrews understood the nature of tragedy and the role of the divine in human affairs. Imagine, for a moment, a world where the gods are capricious and cruel, where the fates of mortals are determined by an unbreakable chain of events that no amount of human will can alter. This is the world of Greek tragedy, where the personal is forever subjugated to the impersonal. In Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, the tragic hero Oedipus is a pawn in a cosmic game, his every action leading inexorably to his downfall. From the moment he is born, Oedipus is fated to kill his father and marry his mother, a destiny that he cannot escape no matter how hard he tries. The prophecy is a cruel joke, a cosmic irony that mocks Oedipus's efforts to avoid it. His tragic flaw, his will to know the truth, is not a character defect, but a fundamental part of his humanity. It is this very will that leads to his ruin. But it is also what makes him a tragic hero. Oedipus's downfall is not a personal failure, but a cosmic inevitability, a demonstration of the human condition as a contest between the personal and the impersonal, with the impersonal always emerging victorious. The Greek tragedy is a cathartic experience, designed to evoke pity and fear in the audience. By gazing upon Oedipus's suffering, we are invited to grieve for ourselves, to recognize the tragic nature of our own existence. We, too, are caught in the web of fate, our lives predetermined by forces beyond our control. The clarity and inevitability of Oedipus's fate make his story both terrifying and compelling. We know what will happen, and yet we cannot look away. The Greek tragedy is a mirror held up to the human condition, reflecting our own helplessness and the futility of our struggles against the impersonal forces that govern the universe. Now, consider a different world, one where the tragic outcome is not predetermined, where the personal and the impersonal are in constant tension, and where the outcome is uncertain. This is the world of Shakespeare's Hamlet, a tragedy that is as much a study of character as it is a narrative of fate. Hamlet, unlike Oedipus, is not a victim of an unalterable destiny. His tragedy is rooted in his own character, his indecision, and his inner conflict. The question of whether Hamlet's flaw is his melancholy, his inaction, or his overthinking has been debated for centuries. But one thing is clear: Hamlet's fate is not inevitable. The particular set of circumstances in which he finds himself, his father's murder, his mother's hasty remarriage, the appearance of his father's ghost, does not determine his end. Instead, it is its own choices and actions that lead to his downfall. Hamlet's tragedy is a personal one, a conflict within his own soul. He is torn between his desire for revenge and his moral reservations, between his love for his mother and his disgust at her actions, between his duty as a prince and his own sense of right and wrong. The uncertainty of Hamlet's fate is what makes his story so compelling. We are never sure what he will do next, and the tension between his inner turmoil and the external pressures on him keeps us on the edge of our seats. Hamlet's tragedy is not a cosmic inevitability, but a personal choice, a reflection of the complexities of human nature. The Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, presents a different kind of tragedy, one that is uniquely character-driven. Unlike the Greek tragedies, where the impersonal forces of fate are the primary drivers of the narrative, and unlike Hamlet, where the protagonist's inner conflict is the central focus, the Tanakh is a story of a personal God and a people in constant dialogue with him. The Tanakh is a collection of stories, laws, and prophecies that span thousands of years. But at its core, it is a narrative of a relationship between God and his chosen people, the Israelites. The God of the Tanakh is not an impersonal force, but a living, breathing character, with a will, a personality, and a complex relationship with his creation. In the Tanakh, the action is always personal. The fate of the Israelites is not determined by an unbreakable chain of events, but by their relationship with God. When they are faithful, God blesses them. When they are unfaithful, he punishes them. The uncertainty of God's actions is a central theme in the Tanakh. The psalmists cry, "Why do you sleep, O Lord?" Psalm chapter 44, verses 23, is a powerful expression of the religious and literary suspense that pervades the Tanakh. The question of whether God will act, and when, is always on the minds of the characters and the readers. This uncertainty creates a sense of tension and suspense that is unique to the Tanakh. The God of the Tanakh is not a single monolithic entity, but a complex character with multiple facets. He is a God of justice and mercy, a God of wrath and love, a God of covenant and judgment. This complexity is reflected in the diverse narratives of the Tanakh. In the story of Noah, God is a compassionate creator who saves his creation from destruction. In the story of Abraham, God is a covenant partner who promises to make Abraham a great nation. In the story of Moses, God is a powerful liberator who delivers his people from slavery. In the story of Job, God is a mysterious and sometimes cruel deity who tests the faith of his servant. These different aspects of God's character create a rich and nuanced portrait of a God who is both personal and unpredictable. The personal nature of the God of the Tanakh is what sets the Tanakh apart from other religious and literary traditions. In Greek tragedy, the gods are distant and impersonal, and human fate is determined by cosmic forces. In Hamlet, the supernatural elements, such as the ghost of Hamlet's father, are more symbolic than personal, and the tragedy is rooted in Hamlet's inner conflict. In the Tanakh, God is a constant presence, actively involved in the lives of his people. He speaks to them, commands them, blesses them, and punishes them. The relationship between God and his people is dynamic and reciprocal, with both sides influencing the course of events. This personal relationship between God and humanity is reflected in the diverse cast of characters in the Tanakh. From the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the prophets Elijah and Isaiah. From the kings David and Solomon to the exiles Nehemiah and Ezra. The Tanakh is a story of individuals whose lives are shaped by their relationship with God. These characters are not passive victims of fate, but active agents in their own stories. They make choices, they act, and they bear the consequences of their actions. The uncertainty of God's response to their actions creates a sense of suspense that is unique to the Tanakh. One of the most striking aspects of the Tanakh is its willingness to portray God as a complex and sometimes contradictory character. In the story of Job, for example, God is both the source of Job's suffering and the one who ultimately restores his fortunes. In the story of Jonah, God is both the one who commands Jonah to prophesy against Nineveh and the one who spares the city despite Jonah's objections. These stories challenge the reader to grapple with the complexity of God's character and the nature of divine justice. They also highlight the importance of faith and trust in a relationship with a God who is not always predictable. The personal nature of the God of the Tanakh also has important implications for the concept of free will. In the Tanakh, the Israelites are not passive recipients of fate, but active participants in their own stories. They are free to choose whether to obey God's commands or to rebel against Him. The consequences of their choices are real and significant, but the choice itself is always theirs. This emphasis on free will is a central theme in the Tanakh, and it sets it apart from the deterministic world view of Greek tragedy. The Tanakh also challenges the reader to consider the nature of divine sovereignty. If God is all-powerful, why does He allow His people to suffer? If God is all-loving, why does He sometimes seem distant and unresponsive? These questions are at the heart of the Tanakh, and they are never fully resolved. The Tanakh is a dialogue, not a monologue, and the relationship between God and humanity is always in flux. This ongoing dialogue creates a sense of tension and suspense that is both challenging and compelling. In the final books of the Tanakh, the narrative takes on a more somber tone. The Israelites are in exile, and the future is uncertain. The prophets speak of a future restoration, but the present is marked by suffering and uncertainty. The Book of Lamentations, for example, is a poignant expression of the Israelites' grief and despair. The Book of Job, with its exploration of the problem of suffering, raises more questions than it answers. The Book of Ecclesiastes, with its skeptical view of life, challenges the reader to find meaning in a world that often seems meaningless. Despite the uncertainty and suffering, the Tanakh ultimately offers a message of hope. The story of the Israelites is not one of unrelenting tragedy, but of a people who, through their faith and perseverance, remain in a relationship with a personal God. The Tanakh ends with the promise of a future restoration, a time when God will act to bring about His plans for His people. This promise of hope is a central theme in the Tanakh, and it provides a counterpoint to the tragedy and suffering that are also a part of the story. In conclusion, the tragedies of Oedipus, Hamlet, and the Tanakh are all reflections of the human condition, but they approach it from different angles. The Greek Tragedy is a story of cosmic inevitability, where the personal is subjugated to the impersonal. Hamlet is a story of personal choice, where the tragic outcome is not predetermined but the result of the protagonist's inner conflict. The Tanakh is a story of a personal God and a people in constant dialogue with him, where the action is always personal and the outcome is uncertain. Each of these narratives offers a unique perspective on the human condition, and together they provide a rich and complex tapestry of human experience.